Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you are joining me. I'm glad you're here and welcome to another episode of Unwrapped, Legacy Media and Computers. If you have been following me and previous episodes, we have been unwrapping a lot of stuff that we've obtained from and through Computer Reset in Garland, Texas. And a lot of the software packages that we got recently have required a computer expansion card called the IBM PC Voice Communications Adapter. And as we say in the vintage electronics business, this card is a piece of unobtainium. It's really hard to come by, but did finally come up with one picked up from somebody who got a whole bunch of IBM equipment and documentation at an estate sale in Vermont. So this episode really isn't focused on the software unwrapping from Computer Reset, but more of a prerequisite. And here is that card. Only came with the card, did not come with the software that is necessary to enable the card to be working with that software from Computer Reset. Another fellow on the vintage computer forums did happen to buy that, and he was super generous and considerate enough to have those posted on the WinWorld PC forums. He took a scan of the documentation and the 2 discs that came with it. Apparently I didn't realize that the seller on eBay, where I did get this card, listed the guide to operations and the discs separately. So, c'est la vie. I have read through the guide to operations. This is what I can tell you. Most of the guide to operations says that the card is for PC, XT, AT. Doesn't say anything about living in the expansion unit, and that's what today's episode is going to be focused on. But one of the things that I want to do today is to look at going through the prerequisites of installation. The guide to operations, which I don't have a hard copy of, but I do have it digitally, talks about before you even rip your system unit or expansion unit apart to install this thing, check your advanced diagnostic disk, which I believe 2.2, that's the version I've got running on the screen right now. Start the system checkout so that you can look and see what's already installed on there, because you have to make some comparisons and change some jumpers on the card. After you install it. So we'll just take a moment and see what it spits out. Now, if you're one of my subscribers who has watched previous videos, you're probably like, you could go back to a previous video and look at the installed adapters and options, and you're absolutely right about that, except my camera is also my phone, my primary capture device. So, and where my quote-unquote little studio is, there's no internet here, it's all cellular connection. So you can shake your head at me later. So, okay, from top to bottom, system board, the expansion card, 640K on board, the keyboard, the CGA adapter, of course, 2 discs on the adapter, the math coprocessor, primary printer adapter, asynchronous communications adapter, alternate asynchronous communications adapter, the game control, the SDLC, which is the data link, and then the hard drive controls and the hard drives. So of course it is. So I'm downloading the PDF of the guide to operations for the card again, just so that we can compare against it. So bear with me, pause, go grab something to drink from the fridge, or maybe munch on something if you're not munching already. Perfect. So one of the things that I like when I look at older IBM documentation is they put groups of expansion cards that use similar IRQs into groups rather than just go through and say, hey, you need to make sure that figure out what a free IRQ is and use that. So on page 5 of the Guide to Operations, it's talking to us about, actually it would be page 6. Starts off with number 4. Using the diagnostics diskette with the highest version number, determine the devices installed in your systems by following these steps. So we've gone through and do that. So it says, with the screen listing, the installed devices appears. Find the devices you have in your system for the following list. In group 2, we have the enhanced graphics adapter, the PC network adapter, and the 3278/79 emulation adapter. We don't have any of those, so I think that's where we'll end up having to adjust this card for, maybe. Group 3 talks about asynchronous communications adapters, alternate asynchronous communications adapters, alternate BSC communications, alternate PC network, alternate serial parallel, alternate cluster adapters, and the SDLC. So that's in there. So group 3 is out. Primary asynchronous, primary BSC, primary serial parallel, and primary SDLC. That's group 4. Group 7, also some other stuff. Okay, so I guess we're going to have to put the card in group 2. So moving along in the Guide to Operations. Yep, remove the communications adapter and card support bracket from the package and place the adapter on a flat surface. We'll do that in a moment. The voice communications adapter is set at the factory at level 4. We need to move it to a different level. So B, if you have no group 2 adapters on your system, the voice communications adapter can use level 2. That's what we want. Go to the next page. And we have to change the system to do that. Oh, isn't that great? They label it on the card, which I guess that's a good thing. JP2. Well, that's something. Let's see if we can get a good focus on here. So it's already set for group 4. And we need to move it to group 2. Go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and set this back in the anti-static bag. So now that we know what to do, we can go ahead and install this thing. Try to install it into the expansion unit and see what happens. So let me just proceed with the... Go ahead and park the heads again, and then we'll turn the system off. There we go. I have to shuffle some things around here. All right. I'll turn the power switch down off at the bottom. Now you'll notice I have I bought the security key switches. They're the OEM IBM ones, and I just think it was kind of neat to put them on the machine so that you can turn the machine on and off with the key. if you don't have to put any cards in or have to get into your expansion or system unit a lot, they're pretty cool. But they are a pain when you have to like start disconnecting things and taking things apart. So let me have to scrounge up the screwdrivers. Look for those. I had to put the Model 25 project on hold for a little while. I'm still waiting on some parts for that. So I'm just gonna unhook the backpack 3.5-inch drive. Essentially, the only thing the expansion unit has got plugged into it is the expansion unit extender cable, power cord, and the parallel cord for the backpack over there. I'm just gonna double check the camera angle. It's probably not good, and I apologize, but only one camera and no switcher. So you have to take, when you're taking the key lock off, it does have one screw in the back, and you can't take the thing off of here without breaking it unless the key is in the on position. So that's why, you'd unplug it anyway, but unplug the unit. And it looks like I ended up misplacing some of the screws. There's only 3 in the back of this case versus the usual 5 that are in here. But that's all right. Just make sure don't lose them, right? And don't drop your expansion unit off your table. Now, I realize IBM was not the first company to get into the home personal computer market. You've got so many other companies. Apple, Tandy Radio Shack, Commodore. But IBM was the first company whose computer I had exposure to. So I just kind of gravitated toward that. And usually with any of the dealings that I have, I try to use authentic IBM options wherever possible. And in the expansion unit, I think there's only one card in here that isn't IBM. And that's the Intel, I think it's the Intel 816 network interface card, which has got, the coax, BNC, and then the RJ45 connector. So, once we get the cover off of this thing, I guess the challenge is going to be what slot is the expansion? Sorry, the PC voice communications card going to go in. And I think we're going to have to do, because that is a full-length card, is we're going to move the Intel NIC over to a middle slot that doesn't have anything in it. And then we'll put the PC communications card here. So let me go ahead and we'll get that ready. We'll take the screw and the cover off of our empty slot. Whoops. Boy, silly me. There we go. Always forget. About slot covers, you know, when doing the screws left or right, are you doing the right one or not? And that's going to be a pain. These are not magnetic screwdrivers. There we are. Okay. Since we are taking the network card out, we can actually confirm what kind it is. And it is an Intel 816 adapter. Screw that back in. Now, I am somewhat concerned that this may all be for naught, because I have no idea. There is no documentation that I've seen, and nobody in any of the frequent haunts, the Vintage Computer Forum, and I am going to leave the FCC sticker where it is. The instructions do say take this off and put it on the outside of the case, but these days, who really cares? Okay. All right. Screwed in. Perfect. Now, one thing I want to do, going to leave the monitor over there with the keyboard on top of it, but I am going to turn the expansion unit around and get the expansion cable plugged back in and power, just so that I can boot up the diagnostics disc and see how it responds to it with the card actually being in the expansion unit versus in the system unit. And if it ends up working, that's a plus. And if it doesn't end up working, well, makes for a much shorter video. Okay. Turn the power switch back on and fire it up. Much louder with the cover off too. Always forget about that. Sometimes I think the hard drives are almost as loud, or sorry, the power supplies are almost as loud as the spinning rust. Okay, moment of truth. System checkout. Here we go. Well, isn't that something? It does actually pick up the voice communications adapter. It's item 71, and it's picking it up in the expansion unit, so that's certainly a plus. We'll say we're going to run test one time, and go ahead, run the extended diagnostics. Well, I can't do that. I don't have the wrap plugs or the documentation. It says section 3-7100. If anybody happens to know where that is, I'm going to go look on -0degrees.net, see if it might be in there. So actually we're going to just Control-Alt-Delete. But hey, it passed basic diagnostics. So I guess that means we can put this back together over the next week or two at the most. I'll get the images of those floppies made, and we can unwrap the software from Computer Reset that actually takes advantage of this card, and that's going to be the PC voice utility that turns your PC into kind of like a call center and answering machine. And I am really psyched to be able to try that out for a couple of reasons, because according to a lot of the software, it doesn't make the assumption that you have a hard disk. Like, it actually can store and save audio messages on 5 1/4 inch disc, which kind of makes me wonder what's the compression format like in order to put really long messages on 5 1/4 inch 360K floppies. So stay tuned. If you haven't subscribed, I hope you click the button. I don't have a Patreon or anything like that. If you are interested in sending me things that you'd like to have shown on an episode of Unwrapped, I would be most gratified to do that. And message me for more information, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.